Have you ever wondered what it's like to buy a home in the wrong area? It's pretty terrible, and honestly, that's a lot of money to spend to learn that lesson. So I'm going to help you find the key information by providing my top 3 pros and cons for each of these areas. The first pro for Raleigh is the abundance of economic opportunities. Raleigh contains every major employment sector, including research and tech, medical, and government jobs. Pair this with the growth, and this is actually one of the biggest reasons I found Raleigh to be attractive. The second pro is Raleigh's educational institutions. Raleigh has several colleges and universities that you could attend, and the biggest one is North Carolina State University. This academic environment provides excellent educational opportunities for all ages, and it also fosters innovation. Even better, Raleigh is also known for its superb K-12 education, hosting some of the top schools in the state. The third pro is recreational activities, which this is one of my favorites. With numerous parks, greenways, and cultural attractions, Raleigh's become a hub of activities for both residents and travelers alike. Now, my favorite 3 are the Greenway, Umstead Park, and of course, if you see my videos, Triangle Rock Club. Moving over to the con side of the list, we have traffic congestion. As the city has grown a lot, traffic congestion has become a problem during rush hour in certain parts of the area. And with it projected to keep growing, this presents a challenge for the city to maintain its infrastructure development on par with the population growth. This kind of bleeds into the second point, which is limited public transportation. Now, while improving, the public transportation options just aren't as extensive as you're going to find in a place like DC or New York City or just any other larger metropolitan area. For example, besides Uber, Lyfts, and the scooters that you see people riding around, you pretty much only have Go Raleigh, which services the bus system. And then last but not least is the urban sprawl. Rapid development has led to urban sprawl, and continued development will probably keep leading to urban sprawl. This could impact the city's character and the infrastructure. Now, I could personally attest to this on the investor side. Out of the entire triangle, most new development for homes can be seen in Knightdale and in Wake Forest. And then within Raleigh, a lot of single-family homes are just being flipped into nicer ones. This means there's not a lot of high-density housing closer to downtown Raleigh, which then puts pressure on these outside suburbs to keep up with the population that has to move there and then commute to Raleigh instead. The city of Raleigh sees this as a problem, so they're trying to get ahead of it by offering high-density housing as well as affordable housing within Raleigh. Moving on to Durham and Chapel Hill, the first pro is definitely the educational excellence. Anyone who's going to college there knows this. For those who don't, Durham and Chapel Hill have both Duke University and UNC Chapel Hill. These 2 universities, along with NC State, provide the triangle its name. And having friends that both attend the schools as students and as employees, you see both of these schools as major drivers of the economy, but also just the educational development. You can say it's sort of a hallmark of those 2 cities. And personally, I've been eyeballing a marketing boot camp offered at UNC Chapel Hill. And the last thing to this point is, even though all 3 areas border the Research Triangle Park, or RTP, RTP is technically a part of Durham, which gives it a slight win academically over the other 2 areas. The second pro of Durham and Chapel Hill is definitely its cultural richness. Both cities are known for their vibrant music and art scenes, with numerous festivals, galleries, and performances throughout the entire year. This is also just one of those subjective areas, but I've had a ton of friends who've decided to settle in Durham and Chapel Hill, and they all sort of just describe it as liking the vibe, so to speak. From my view, really what they're saying is this cultural richness leads to sort of a more vibrant community, and then ultimately a nice little artsy feel to the area. The third point for Durham and Chapel Hill is the dining and entertainment option. It goes from fine dining all the way to cozy, welcoming local eateries. And one of my favorite places is called Namu, which has its own outdoor seating area that's within their own bamboo garden. So as long as you're a foodie, there's plenty of places to try. And then moving over to the con side of Durham and Chapel Hill, the first of which is higher cost of living. The higher cost of living can be seen in the average house prices in the area. And these prices reflect the premium of being next to the 2 top universities in the state. The second con is parking and traffic. And these 2 things are probably one of the most shared common gripes of that area. It's just not really designed to support the amount of traffic that it gets, and it is expanding, but it's always a question of, does the expansion match the growth? So the 2 things that I recommend is either go during the off times for major attractions, or if you can't really, then just know that you might be driving around for a little bit to find parking. I think the last con for these 2 cities is definitely the job market limitations. While there are opportunities in education and healthcare, other sectors might just have a little bit less options when compared to bigger cities. And I know that I mentioned RTP is technically within Durham. I'm counting that one out because all 3 of these areas border RTP. So if you're moving to Durham or Chapel Hill for a job, my recommendation is do your research first, or even better yet, have an accepted job offer before you move here. Moving into Cary and Morrisville, the first pro up front is definitely that it's a family-friendly environment. And this is definitely the most family-friendly compared to the other two areas. They have excellent schools, safe neighborhoods, and they're near popular family amenities. For a recent example of this, robotics teams based out of Cary High Schools are heading to Houston, Texas to go into the International Robotics Championships. The second pro is the quality of life. Residents enjoy a high quality of life with well-maintained parks, green spaces, and community events. And this quality is a consistent aspect of these cities. I've gone to these places many times just to go on walks with friends. And for the third pro, I put the proximity to RTP. Even though I said all three areas have generally equal access to the RTP and that RTP is technically part of Durham, Cary is kind of a small area. And so it's a concentrated area with easy access to RTP. Whereas on the other hand, you could be in East Raleigh or West Durham and have a very long commute. And even if you're in South Cary, the commute is still 15 minutes, maybe 20 at max. So in a way, Cary and Morrisville could be seen as the suburbs of RTP. The first con of these two cities is the cost of housing. The popularity of these areas have been driving the housing prices up, making it on par with Chapel Hill. And at one point before I moved, I actually really wanted to live in this area. And as a realtor, I could also echo this because I've seen homes here go under contract within days and sometimes before the listing even goes live. It sort of reminds me of trying to buy a home during the COVID era. So all this means is if you're gonna try to move there, just do all of your prep work in advance so that you're competitive when submitting an offer. The second con of this area is that it's a suburban feel. While everybody living in these areas already understand it's a suburban area, for those looking for a more vibrant atmosphere or for access to nightlife, you're gonna have better luck in Raleigh or Durham. And again, this area attracts mostly families, so that's not really a problem for people who live there. Even if it is, you're gonna get a great house in a great location, and you'll still have access to the rest of the triangle. And then the last con are growth pressures. Rapid population growth has put a lot of pressure on infrastructure and resources, which leads to the city having challenges maintaining the roads and other services. Furthermore, this also partially contributes to the supply and demand imbalance and therefore the higher housing prices. And I understand this anecdotally because I grew up in the outskirts of Tampa, specifically in the 90s and early 2000s. This place eventually became Tampa's version of Cary Morrisville, and it felt like for 2 to 3 decades, they were constantly expanding and then further expanding road. Now, this depends on if Cary and Morrisville have consistent growth, but if they do, then take it from my experience, just be prepared for a lot of traffic and continuous construction, especially with the roads. All right, so knowing the pros and cons is the easy part. I want you to ask yourself, how do you know you're not making a huge mistake on where to live? Before I moved here, work had always told me where to live and when to move. Therefore, when I got out of the army, I struggled with this question for months, but then I changed my approach. And as a result, I was able to choose more confidently. And this takes us to our final answer. Gauge how each area supports your values is really the core of what makes your lifestyle. Now, here's a list of 10 values that I ended up using to evaluate my options. And due to time, I included explanations of each in the description below. These are community engagement, convenience and accessibility, cultural appreciation, sustainability, urban lifestyle, professional ambition, health and wellness, innovation and progressiveness, social connectivity, and lastly, aesthetic appreciation. Now, it's very important to say that these values apply differently to every single person, but I'm still going to share my personal examples in hopes of providing you some insight. And I think this is hands down the most important approach to finding your home. So as I'm going through mine, just think about how this might apply to you. First up, Durham and Chapel Hill. The 3 most notable values for this area would have been social connectivity, cultural appreciation, and progressiveness. For those who have seen my other videos, you know that I'm an avid rock climber. And right now, Durham is the strongest climbing scene. And as such, all of my friends lived out in that area. So this was my primary social outlet. And even outside of rock climbing, there's plenty of opportunities for anyone. Several creative classes just offered in the community, and then also the community events that get hosted there. And like I previously mentioned, Durham and Chapel has a very artsy feel to them. And this is perhaps due to the universities that are there, which in any case, this has brought together a large array of cultural expressions, which as a foreign language learner, I'm a huge fan of. And then lastly, I think this led to the progressive mindset of that area. You'll find this progressive mindset in all parts of the triangle, but I found it especially easy to find in Durham Chapel Hill. Next up is Cary and Morrisville. The 3 values from my list that stood out here was convenience and accessibility, professional ambition, and health and wellness. And while convenience and accessibility is relative to whatever you have going on in your life, Cary and Morrisville specifically allowed me as a real estate agent to have equal access to the entire triangle, which in turn made it a lot more consistent to show homes. And for those not in real estate, this still generally holds true. RTP is right down the road, and then any major employer between Raleigh and Durham Chapel Hill is equidistant. This feeds into the second point of professional ambition. The all-around access and the fact that Cary is one of the most in-demand areas in the triangle meant that I had consistent, reliable professional growth. This is also shared throughout several industries, as many big-name companies are already moving to the triangle. And finally, Raleigh. The three values that stood out to me was professional ambition, community engagement / social connectivity, and convenience and accessibility. Professional ambition for me is similar to Cary's point, but instead of being centrally located in the triangle, I would be very specifically located in the highest concentration of development in the triangle between Raleigh, Knightdale, and Wake Forest. RTP is still 25 to 30 minutes away from where I ended up living, but you could still also just be 5 or 10 minutes down the road of RTP. And then if you live in downtown Raleigh, you just have a plethora of opportunities between all major industries. Now, community engagement and social connectivity is a huge one for me. There's a reason for Raleigh that I combine both of these two. For one, the Raleigh Ironworks area is developing the state's largest rock climbing gym, and then right down the road of that, they're creating dedicated pickleball courts. And if that's not enough, the second point is Raleigh is a social powerhouse. You have the Raleigh Convention Center, Red Hat Amphitheater, PNC Arena, Joseph M. Bryan Amphitheater, the Kuyver Amphitheater. Of course, if you live in the triangle, generally speaking, you could just drive to these events. Again, personally me, I value being very close to these. In some cases, I'm just walking distance from these. Next is convenience and accessibility, which again, you'll notice is similar to Cary's list. This is slightly different. Like before, it still is closely tied to my professional ambition, but in this case, it's also because Raleigh has the Greenway. The Greenway is a citywide biking and walking trail. This offers both fitness enthusiasts and those who like to bike to work options to get around the city. Furthermore, this also supports the overall sustainability of the city, and the city of Raleigh is literally incorporating this by design. That's a huge sell point for me. Now, stepping back to the original question, can you imagine what it would be like to buy a house in the wrong area? And there's more to say in terms of pros and cons, or even how each area could support different values or lifestyles. But if you use this approach, I guarantee you're going to feel significantly more secure whenever it comes time to make that decision. And there are people that could help you navigate this, whether it be a spouse, family, friends, or a realtor. Seriously, if you want to move to this area and you need help, contact me. I do this professionally. Here's a massive, serious question that I'm going to leave you with. Why should you move to the Triangle to begin with? I'll answer this in next week's video when I compare Raleigh to Tampa, Florida, and Charlotte, North Carolina. Thanks. See you next time.